The day the empire hanged 76,000 brides, and sealed its fate. The imperial courtyard of Vexus Prime was silent, save for the flutter of banners in the wind. It was a silence not born of peace, but of horror. 76,000 nooses dangled from the gallows, and beneath them stood the condemned brides, all of them, their wedding gowns dirtied by the march to their execution. They had been chosen carefully, a message from the empire to the rebellious human colonies. A lesson in obedience. These women were the wives, fiancées, and betrothed of soldiers who had dared to resist imperial rule. The emperor, in his infinite cruelty, decreed that no human warrior should have a home to return to. And so, in the largest mass execution in recorded history, the empire hanged the brides. Humanity did not mourn in silence. Word spread like wildfire across the colonies and beyond, carried by sobbing refugees, by broken fathers, by mothers who clawed their faces in grief. But grief turned to something else. Something old, something primal. It turned to vengeance. They came from the shadows, from the black reaches of space where the empire had never cared to look. The exiled warlords of humanity, the remnants of shattered armies, the outcasts who had been too brutal even for the rebellion. They gathered beneath one banner, the widow's vengeance. Their leader was no general, no statesman. She was a widow herself. Alara Voss had once been a simple woman, a scholar, a mother. Her husband had been among those who fought, and her daughter had been among those hanged. When she stood before the grieving, she did not ask for words, she asked for war. And war she received. The first strike came without warning. The empire had grown complacent, believing itself unassailable. The orbital station over Zendrel, a symbol of imperial dominance, vanished in a flash of fire as Widow's vengeance ships dropped from hyperspace, weapons roaring. The attack was precise, calculated. Not a single civilian was harmed, only imperial forces suffered. It was a message. The second strike was bloodier. The imperial colony of Fexas-4, home to the governor who had ordered the mass execution, found itself besieged. The governor himself was dragged from his mansion and forced to witness as the very people he had oppressed decided his fate. He was left hanging in the town square, a fitting tribute to the 76,000 lost souls. World after world fell into chaos. The empire's forces scrambled to respond, but they had grown used to fighting disorganized rebels. This was no rebellion. This was revenge, disciplined and unyielding. Widow's vengeance knew no mercy, offered no quarter. For every innocent lost, they took 10 imperials. And yet, the final blow was still to come. The emperor's throne world, Vectress, was considered impenetrable. Its defenses were legendary, its fleet unparalleled. But defenses meant nothing against those who did not fear death. The Widow's fleet arrived in force, bypassing the outer defenses by sacrificing ships in calculated explosions, breaking holes in the blockade. The Empire had never seen such tactics, because no one had ever fought with such sheer, unrelenting fury. The imperial palace burned. The nobles, who had dined and laughed while human brides swung from ropes, found themselves hunted in the very halls where they had plotted their cruelty. The emperor himself was dragged from his throne. He did not receive a trial. He was given a rope. When the sun rose over Vectress, the once great seat of the empire was no more. From its ruins, a new era was born, not one of conquest, but of retribution. Humanity did not forgive. Humanity did not forget. The empire had hanged 76,000 brides. But it was humanity that buried an empire. The galactic empire believed itself to be invincible. Its fleets darkened the stars, its armies crushed resistance with relentless efficiency, and its iron grip stretched across 1,000 worlds. But for all its might, the empire never understood humanity. It never learned that some wounds fester into vengeance. Some sins are paid for in blood. It began on the planet Ardentia, a human colony known for its fierce independence. When the imperial governor, Lord Vorthan, decreed that all human territories must provide tribute in the form of soldiers, Ardentia refused. They would not send their sons and daughters to die for the empire's wars. The resistance was peaceful at first: petitions, diplomatic envoys, even an appeal to the imperial senate. But the empire did not negotiate. It punished. The emperor's wrath was swift and cruel. Instead of exterminating the colony outright, he sought to break their spirit. He ordered the execution of every woman who had been recently wed, believing that by doing so, he would shatter the will of the men who loved them. 76,000 brides were dragged from their homes, bound, and marched to the central plaza. There, before a galaxy-wide broadcast, the empire hanged them all. The air filled with the sound of crackling ropes, choked gasps, and the weeping of an entire world. But the empire had made a grave miscalculation. Among the dead was the wife of Colonel Dane Varick, a celebrated tactician and former imperial officer who had retired to Ardentia. He had sworn off war, hoping to build a quiet life with his beloved Alara. When he watched her lifeless body swing from the execution scaffolds, something inside him broke, and something far more dangerous took its place. Dane did not mourn. He did not weep. He did not scream to the heavens. He plotted. In the days following the massacre, the empire assumed victory. It believed Ardentia's spirit had been crushed. But in the shadows, a storm gathered. Dane rallied the broken, the grieving, and the enraged. He reached out to old allies, warlords who had once fought against the empire, smugglers with hidden fleets, and assassins who knew the dark corridors of power. And then, the requital began. Within weeks, imperial garrisons fell to surgical strikes. Weapons depots exploded in the night. Supply lines were sabotaged. The empire's hold on Ardentia crumbled like sand in the wind. Dane was no longer merely a soldier, he was a specter of vengeance, his name whispered in fear by imperial officers. The rebellion spread like wildfire. Other human colonies, long chafing under imperial rule, saw Ardentia's defiance and rose in turn. The empire found itself fighting not just an insurgency, but a crusade. Every world that had lost sons and daughters, every people that had suffered under imperial tyranny, saw in Dane a beacon of retribution. The climax came when Dane and his forces stormed the imperial palace on the empire's capital world. The emperor, once untouchable, now found himself at the mercy of the man whose love he had murdered. With cold precision, Dane dragged the ruler of 1,000 worlds into the streets, just as the empire had done to the brides of Ardentia. And before a galaxy-wide broadcast, he hanged him. The symbol was clear. The empire had sown the wind. Now it reaped the storm. As the emperor's lifeless body dangled before the eyes of trillions, the message rang through the stars: there were some lines no empire could cross and survive. And on that day, the Galactic Empire sealed its fate. The day the Galactic Empire hanged 76,000 brides was the day it ensured its own destruction. It began as an act of punishment, a demonstration of the Empire's unwavering authority. The brides were the wives, daughters, and mothers of rebel soldiers, hostages taken to force the resistance into submission. When the insurgents refused to surrender, the Emperor ordered a mass execution. He expected fear to ripple through the stars, expected humanity to bow, expected the war to end. But the emperor did not understand humanity. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. 76,000 women, bound and noosed, their bodies swaying in the cold void of a dozen worlds, their final breaths stolen by the arrogance of an empire that believed it could snuff out the unbreakable human spirit. The response was not surrender. It was vengeance. Humanity had fought wars before, had suffered atrocities, had seen genocide and desolation. But never had they witnessed something so calculated, so heinous. Never had they been given such a clear, undeniable reason to burn an empire to ash. The retaliation began immediately. It wasn't just soldiers who took up arms, it was civilians, farmers, scholars, merchants, engineers, and medics. A human fleet, once fragmented and struggling, united overnight. The rebels became an unstoppable force, fueled not by mere anger but by the unrelenting, undying fury of loss. First, they struck supply lines, crippling the Empire's war machine. Then, they turned planets against their rulers, sowing rebellion on every imperial world where humans lived. One by one, the Empire's governors fell, executed by the very people they once oppressed. It wasn't just war, it was annihilation. Entire sectors burned. Human operatives infiltrated high command, dismantling the empire from within. The emperor's advisors were assassinated, his generals defected or vanished, and his fleets crumbled under relentless human offensives. No matter how many troops the empire threw at them, the humans fought harder. For every soldier they lost, 100 more rose in their place. Then came the final blow. The humans stormed the imperial capital, not as an army, but as a reckoning. The emperor, once a god among mortals, was dragged from his throne, his regal robes torn, his crown shattered. The people did not grant him a swift death. He was paraded through the streets, forced to see the faces of those he had wronged, forced to hear the names of the women he had murdered. He begged for mercy. Humanity gave him none. His body was left hanging in the ruins of his own palace, a symbol of the empire's fall. His name was erased from history, his dynasty wiped from existence, his legacy reduced to ashes. The Galactic Empire, once the most powerful force in the universe, was no more. And so, on the day the empire hanged 76,000 brides, it did not instill fear. It sealed its fate.